back, I'm Natasha. This is the video series on how to plan your garden for the year. Today we're going to be talking about when to plant what. This is probably my favorite section of planning because I like calendars, I like dates. I just like to know when I'm doing what. Especially if I can plan it in advance, I can look ahead at next week and see I'm doing this, this, and this. You can look ahead at your calendar in coming months and see, oh, on this day I'm going to be planting out salad greens outside, so I need to schedule my other activities to leave room, or time rather, for going outside and plopping some seeds in the soil, making sure that that is staying on the schedule for when it needs to come up and harvest and make room for the next thing. Anyway, that is a lot of talking. Let's get to business and I'll explain to you what that's going to look like. So the first thing I suggest you do is go to almanaccom. This is where I go to get a rough idea of the dates that I should follow for what kind of crops, when I should start them indoors, when I should transplant them outdoors, or if I can just start them directly in the garden outside, it'll also give me a date for when it's best to do that. Now, to know what dates to give you, almanaccom is going to ask you what is your local zip code, your state, or you can even put in your city. And it will determine for you what is your last frost date and your first frost date. And what that means is, what is the last day in the year after winter that you're gonna have a frost? Remember, this is an average date. It's not secure for sure. It's not, they do not predict the weather. God predicts the weather. But they can give you an average of years in past when the rough average frost is gonna be. So that calendar is going to use your last frost date as well as your first frost date, which is the date that they expect you to have a frost again at the end of your garden season. So this would be kind of in the fall heading towards winter. Now, you have a choice to make here. This almanac also gives you the option to plant by the moon phases. Now, I just recently got into planting by the moon phases and thought it was a really cool and funky idea, but it is actually very interesting and kind of makes a lot of sense. Let me show you. In this handy PDF that you can download from the description box below, I've included a page where I'm explaining to you, and I actually keep one for reference as well, the moon phases. This is important for planting if you want to plant by the moon phases, which I suggest you do. I just started doing it and I think I saw some success as a result of this. And so basically what it's about is that you've got your 4 moon phases, new moon, new moon and full moon, and then in between those you've got waxing and waning. Now the almanac believes, and they have figured out way above me, that when the moon is waxing, that is the best time to be planting above ground crops and other plants like annuals that are going to be coming up every year that you need to be planting. I wonder when the perennials come up. I don't have that on here. So when the moon is waxing, meaning it is adding on and becoming a full moon, as you can see the transition here, that's when you want to be planting above ground crops. After your full moon, when the moon is starting to wean again to a new moon, you want to be planting crops that go below the ground, so like carrots and beets, or turnips, potatoes, onions, anything that is going to grow underground. That is the time that is best to be planting that. I'm not sure what that's all related to, something about the way that the earth is pulling and something to do with the water and the way that it pulls down or up. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to try to pretend to sit here and explain like I know what that process is about. If you want to plan by the moon, go ahead to almanaccom and read about it. I bet you that it will make much more sense there. Alright, now why am I telling you all of this? When you put in your zip code or your state or your city, this almanaccom will give you a list of vegetables and when to plant them. So you will see when you put it in on the internet that it is going to give you 2 dates beside each vegetable. Now you have the option to plant according to the moon or according to the frost date. Now you'll see there isn't much of a difference between the dates. I must say that last year there was a greater difference between the dates, and so I thought, well, golly, for sure, this is important. But this year I noticed that they're actually very much the same. Interesting. And also, this year they're kind of giving us a range of dates, whereas last year they were giving us sometimes very specific dates, like on this Wednesday, you know, you are gotta be doing this. And so, anyway, you make the decision if you want to plant according to the frost or the moon phases. Most people plant according to the frost dates. They do the calculation of when they expect the frost to be, and they count back the days that they see, that they know a crop is going to take to mature, and then they plant it. So, most people follow the frost dates, and there's nothing wrong with either or. I really liked the moon phases last year because it gave me a specific date to plant something. And as you can see this year, there's more of a range, so there is an exact date, so you can choose. Interesting process, kind of worth learning about. More to come on that in the years as I keep studying that and plugging along. So print that out, have that beside you. That's going to help you plan out your calendar. Now, in the PDF, I've also got some calendars. You can print your own calendars, or if you've got a planner or anything. But I just added in some months that's going to be able to help you if you don't have a planner or a calendar. And so you're going to be wanting to map out the rough timing. Okay, let me take a sip of coffee. Oh, which is already getting cold. Nothing like planning with a good cup of coffee or tea. So when you have your calendar ready and you have your printout of when the dates are that you should be planting stuff, you want to be creating on your calendar time periods where it is appropriate for you to be planting, say for example, kale or spinach. And so what I did on mine, I can show you. Now, before I made this PDF, I just printed a calendar from online, a free printable calendar. So when I did my area and printed it out from almanaccom, it gave me a list and told me when I should be planting certain crops. Also written down my moon phases here, so that's easy for me to see. And also the crops that I'm going to be growing right here and how long it takes to mature. After I have my dates, I went to a calendar and I plotted out roughly when this guide told me that I should be doing stuff on a calendar. And so then I would put a range, a time period when it would be good for me to plant something. So for example, start indoor, basil, broccoli, cabbage, and kale. So I saw from my list, which I printed from almanaccom, that it was the proper time for me to be planting basil indoors March 2nd to 16th and to plant it outdoors April 30th. And so you can see here that the months are pretty highlighted. And basically it's like when to start stuff indoors, when to transplant, when to direct sow outside. And you'll start to see that there is groups of stuff that you could be clunking together on certain days. This year is kind of chaotic because like I was saying last year, the dates were pretty much on this Wednesday you're doing this, on Saturday you're doing this, or from Friday to Monday you have the time to do this. So I'm not really sure what's up with that. But this is going to be so helpful to you later because you're going to know, okay, in the first week of March, I know that I need to be from the 2nd to the 16th at any point in that time, starting indoors, my basil, my broccoli, my cabbage, my kale, and my tomatoes. I know that. I don't have to wonder. I can just put this calendar up right on my fridge, and in the last week of February, I can see, oh, okay, coming up for March, I need to be ready to be starting these things indoors, and so I can plan all my activities around this to make room for time to start all these things. What's also nice about that is I can see at once all the things that I need to start together. So that day I'm just going to my seed cabinet and I'm grabbing basil, broccoli, cabbage, kale, tomatoes all at once, preparing a tray and starting them all at once. No thinking, no calculating, no planning. It's all done for me without having to rack my brain about it on that day or in that week. Why is this so important? Let me tell you. Life gets so busy. Right now, the garden is so exciting, nothing's going on really, and we're all dreaming and getting really excited to get out there and plant stuff. But life gets so busy. Summer is the time when we're going away on holidays, fishing, camping, sports activities or family get-togethers and lots of barbecuing, and you just, guys, it gets busy. I don't know about you, but our summers are packed. Also, it gets just kind of hot and you get tired, and I don't know. There's a whole bunch of reasons why the summer is just a bit quicker than the rest of the months that are, you know, slower and more relaxed. So when you are going crazy and life is busy, going crazy. I don't mean to say you're going crazy, but when life gets crazy, the garden is gonna start taking a back seat, because if you've got a lot of things going on, why would you be going out there right now and planting stuff? Yeah, okay, you really care about the food that's gonna come out of there, and you really want the flowers to come up so you can decorate your house. But if you've gotta do a bunch of things that are way more important than that, you're just gonna leave the garden. And so having a planner is so good, because you can just plan around it. You know these small little tasks that you gotta do on, you know, between these dates. And so you can plan for it in advance. And they're also in smaller sections. It doesn't feel like this massive big thing, gardening, you know? It's just, okay, for this week and next week, I gotta focus on this task. And for this week and next week, I gotta focus on this task. You know, it just breaks it down into smaller chunks of things to be doing, along with all the other things that have to happen in the garden, like weeding and watering and harvesting and processing. Guys, have a calendar. Have it all mapped out. It's so easy. It's so worth it. This really saved my butt last year because, well, it was our first year kind of heavy gardening, I would say. And if I did not have a plan, I would have given up much earlier. There just isn't time for all the things that you think that you have time for right now. And so, have a planner. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but guys, this is so helpful. All mapped out, small little tasks, doesn't feel so overwhelming, and gardening can stay fun. On that note, I heard this week in a great video from Roots and Refuge Farm. If you're on YouTube watching this video, then you probably know who she is. If not, go ahead and search her up. She has lots of helpful tips for gardening. Roots and Refuge Farm. And she mentioned something so important that I think is worth repeating. If the garden isn't a beautiful place to you where it's not just a bunch of work, you're probably gonna abandon it at some point, because anything that feels like work, at some point we just put it aside. Like, that is enough, you know? And so it's important to create a space, and I would say even an activity that you enjoy doing that doesn't feel like a laborious task. Because when something feels extra and just like it's going to require so much of your time and energy, it's easier to just kind of put that aside. So make life easy for yourself. Make it simple. And I just want to say one more thing about the gardening beautiful thing. Make it a place where you would love to go and rest even. Like we like to on a Sunday, just go lay out there in the garden. We put down a blanket on the grass and we just lay under the trees and look around, look at the sky, and have it also be a place where you can rest and not just work. And if you plan it out like this, I'm telling you that having your tasks set out and that way you can accomplish them and be done with it. We spent most of our summer last year enjoying the garden and not working in it because we did all the prep in advance, planted stuff when it needed to be planted without overthinking it, and yeah, we enjoyed most of the garden season because we could just go lay in the garden and we didn't have to labor and work. It was amazing. Plan out. I don't know how many times I can say that. I think it's so worth doing. Yes, so part 2, go plan your garden calendar. Go to almanaccom, find out what is the planting dates for your area. If you want to plant according to the moon, it'll give you those dates as well. Plot them out on a calendar, kind of the sections and weeks that you need to be ready to do certain things. Ooh, what I should mention is that this is going to go hand in hand with the first task of this garden plan, which is to make a list of the food that you actually enjoy eating. So a recap from video 1 is that you are making lists of food that you actually enjoy eating, or flowers that you enjoy or like to grow. And once you have a list of the things that you actually eat, you can make a list of the seeds that you already have, for all of you who have already bought lots of seeds before and don't need to buy any more. List of foods you eat, list of seeds you already have, and then making a list of the seeds that you can go out and buy that you are missing from the list that you actually eat. Which will be a small list, normally, unless it is your first time gardening. Lots of pointing. And then finally adding any kind of information that you know about that crop for later planning. This video is all about when to grow what, when to start what, when to plant what. And how you're gonna figure that out is by going to the almanaccom, right? That is where you're gonna print that list where it's gonna tell you roughly when you can plant stuff indoors, transplant it, or start it outdoors. That's gonna be based on your first and last frost date or the moon phases, which also takes into account the first and last frost date, I should say that. And so once you have your coffee, 1 second. So you have your calendar printed out, you've got your almanac list of when things should be going and being planted in it. So you are plotting it out section by section, what you should be doing when. And now I know from this time to this time, I should be starting seeds indoors, blah, 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 blah. Or I should be, and here's another part. A week after that, I'm gonna be starting this indoors. And a week after that, I'm gonna be direct sowing radishes outside if I want to be. And a week after that, I'll be direct sowing carrots. And so this is super helpful. You don't have to overthink it. By the time you get to your crazy busy middle of the season and summer is hectic and warm, you can just look ahead and see, okay, I've got a week to plant the following, or I've got a week to start whatever indoors. This is also going to be so helpful to you when you are harvesting a ton of produce from your garden and you can't even think about when you should be planting stuff. Because you are also going to be later adding to this calendar roughly when things are going to be ready, or you can start looking for squashes, or you can start looking for a watermelon or a broccoli or, you know, salad or whatever the case may be. Your basil's going to be ready and you need to be making pesto, and guys, it's going to get bonkers, okay? That is the fun of the garden. And so if you can plan as much as you can right now, you'll know when you're going to be planting things, you'll know roughly when you're going to harvest them, and you can kind of schedule when you should be ready for the masses of food to come into your house, which is why we do this in any case, the food and the flowers, if you're doing flower gardening, which I suggest you do, as you heard in my last video. So plan out a garden, plan out a calendar, if I haven't made that a bazillionly times clear in this video. It's so worth it, I highly suggest it. And stay tuned for next week when we're going to be talking about how to plot out your garden. So we're going to be sketching our gardens, figuring out what should be going where, and that you're going to be able to do based on the list of foods that you already have, when you're going to be starting things indoors and when they should be going outdoors, or when you can direct sow them, and how long things should take to mature. Then we're going to plot out where things should go in the garden, what's going to rotate, because this is a quick crop and something else can come in. Anyway, already getting into that, I just can't help myself. Stay tuned for the next video where you're going to learn where to plot stuff out into the garden. But for this part right now, just go ahead and print your calendar, go to almanaccom, print the list of vegetables and when you should start them indoors, plant them outside, or start them outside, and get to mapping out your calendar so you just have a rough idea when you're planning to plant stuff. Thank you so much for following along, and I'll catch you in the next video.